Hi, today we're going to talk about the metric system and the prefixes that we use in the metric system and what those prefixes mean. And we'll be able to convert by the end of this lesson how to convert between different units of measurement within the same metric system. So the metric system is what we use in science. It is based on our decimal system. So it's based on a base of 10. That means when you're trying to make a measurement, it's very, very easy to make the measurement because everything is divided evenly in tens. So if you look at the English system, let's say if we're talking about measuring something with a ruler, there's 12 inches to a foot. That makes things a little more difficult to measure because your divisions aren't easy to calculate. But if you're talking about the metric system, you can say there are 100 centimeters to a meter. There's 1,000 millimeters to a meter. It makes things a lot easier to convert. This one is used pretty much around the world. And all the scientists use it, and engineers use the metric system for measurement. So just to talk about a little bit about this measuring system, we have the SI measuring system, measurement system, which we talked about earlier. We talked about different units that you need to use when we're talking about SI units. But the metric system is within this SI measurement system. And there are only 3 countries that have not officially adopted using the metric system. Those 3 countries are Liberia, which is in Western Africa. You have Myanmar, which used to be called Burma in Southeast Asia, and the United States. Those are the only 3 countries in the world that do not use the metric system regularly. So among those countries, those other 2 countries that you mentioned, they are using the metric system regularly. It's just not official yet. The United States, back in 1866, adopted the SI unit, but it has not gone into practice here in this country very well. Even though since I was young, they keep talking about converting everything to the metric system. So every other country in the world uses it. Okay. So just to review what we did when we were talking about scientific method, for every measurement you have, there must be a number followed by a unit from a measuring device. So if you want to say, that park is a certain distance away, you would say it is 1 kilometer away, a number followed by a unit. And that number is going to be as precise as your measurement. When we talked about our significant figures, it's going to be determined by our measuring device. Okay. So if you want to convert between prefixes, you're going to do 2 things. You're going to find the difference between the exponents of the 2 prefixes, and you're going to move the decimal that many places. So we're going to be using scientific notation in this method of converting between different units. And since we know how to use scientific method, since we know how to use scientific notation and we talked about moving decimals, this should not be so difficult. So let's look at what our prefixes look like. Okay, these are the metric. Okay, so going back to our same little table here, we have our metric prefixes. Again, for pre-AP, you need to know all of these metric prefixes. For on level, you need to know from mega to pico. Okay, so there's a couple things you want to notice. First of all, if you notice on this piece of paper, I have put a little yellow line there. That is your base. That is 10 to the 0. So if you look here, exa is times 10 to the 18. That means if you have exameters, you have times 10 to the 18 meters. Mega has 1 times 10 to the 6. That's a million. So if you have a megameter, you have a million meters. Okay. Centi is times 10 to the minus 2, or 0.01. So that means if you have a centimeter, you have 1 times 10 to the minus 2 meters. Okay. So if you're told I have 1 kilometers or kilometers, as you most likely have heard it before, how many centimeters is that? Well, you're going to see how many spots you are going to move. Okay, so if we're going from kilometers to centimeters, you're going to go 3 spots here to the base, and then 2 more spots to there. So you're going to move the decimal 5 places. 3 to 0, 0 to 2. That's 5 spots. And which way are you going to move the decimal? You're going to move the decimal to the right. Okay, going back to the same slide, there's something I want you to notice. And I want you to notice the pattern for the multiplier that these metric prefixes have. So let's look at centi. Or let's look at deci. Okay, so if you go from deci is 1 times 10 to the minus 1, or 0.1. If you go down to centi, it's times 10 to the minus 2, or 0.01. You go to milli, it's times 10 to the minus 3. So it went minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. Then it goes minus 6, minus 9, minus 12, minus 15, minus 18. And the other direction, if you have deca, you have times 10 to the positive 1, then 2, then 3, then it jumps up to 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. So there's a pattern here that you need to recognize. Okay, and you need to know what each of these meanings are for each of these prefixes. You need to know that kilo means times 10 to the 3 or 1,000. You need to know that micro means times 10 to the minus 6 or 0.000001. So you need to know what those mean. And there's a way of remembering them. For pre-AP, you need to know them all. For on level, you need to know a few less. So these are the ones that on level has. So just to focus on just smaller numbers, we have mega. It's a capital M for mega. If you see a capital M, that means mega. If you see a little m, that is milli. Okay, so we're going from, here's your base. This is 10 to the 0 or 1. You're going to go from 0, 1, 2, 3. Then you jump up by 3 to 6. In the other direction, you went from 0, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. Then you jump up to minus 6, minus 9, minus 12. And you must know what these things mean. So there's a way of remembering these, and you should have learned it probably in middle school. It'll probably sound familiar. And for those of you that haven't learned it, now you're going to learn it. So we got King Henry. Poor King Henry. He died unexpectedly by drinking chocolate milk. Okay? So kilo, king. Hecto, Henry, died, deca. Here it says unit. So this is unexpectedly. Sometimes you see it with the word by for base. So unexpectedly drinking, 0.1, chocolate, 0.01, milk, 0.001. That's how you can remember these. That's most of the ones for pre-AP. You have one more over here for pre-AP, which is the mega, right? So you can add it to, you can add mighty King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk. And then on this side, after milli, you have micro, nano, and pico, which you just need to remember. Okay, so you need to remember what these prefixes mean. For pre-AP, you need to go all the way from 10 to the minus 18 to 10 to the positive 18. So how do you move things? So we're going to look at the ladder method. And the ladder method is just looking to see what is that difference between different units, different prefixes, and how far do we need to move a decimal. So we talked about that a little bit when I was showing you the slide on the PowerPoint, but we're going to talk about it here as well. If you want to go from kilo to deca, kilo is 1,000 and deca is 10. So if you're going from 1,000 to 10 or 10 to the 3 to 10 to the 1, you are moving how many spots? 1, 2. You're going from times 10 to the 3 to times 10 to the 1. You're going to move 1, 2 spots. Okay, so that you're going to move your decimal 2 spots. If you're going to a larger unit, you're going to move your decimal point to the left. If you're going to a smaller unit, you're going to move your decimal point to the right. If I want to go from kilo to meters, let's say I have 1 kilometer, and I want to know how many meters that is. How many spots are we moving from? We're moving 1, 2, 3 spots. So 1 kilo is going to move 3 spots, which means then 1 kilometer is going to be 1 meter. 1 kilogram is going to be 1,000 grams. Sorry, 1 kilometer is going to be 1,000 meters. 1 kilogram can be 1,000 grams. 1 kiloliter will be 1,000 liters. If you want to move from kilo to deci, you're going to move how many spots? 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're going to move your decimal 4 spots to the right. If you're going from deci to kilo, you're still going to move your decimal 4 spots, but now you're going to move it in the other direction. So the letter method says you're going to determine your starting point. You're going to count how many jumps you have till your ending point, and you're going to move the decimal the same number of jumps. Okay? So let's look at if you have 4 kilometers. How many meters is that? 4 kilometers. How many meters is that? How many jumps does it take? You're going from kilometer to your base, meters, and you're taking 1, 2, 3 jumps. So you're going to move your decimal 3 jumps, 4,000. Okay, you're moving to the right and down, so you're going to be a larger number. Okay, so let's practice a couple of these. Let's start with the first one, 20 centimeters, and we want to find out how many meters is that. Well, right now, we know the decimal is right there. Okay, so let's go back to this guy. Okay, so we are going from centimeters to our base up here. So we're going to move in this direction. So if we're moving in that direction, we're going to move the decimal to the left. So we're going from centimeters to meters. How many spaces? We're going from 10 to the minus 2 to our base, which is 0. We're moving 2 spaces. And because we're going up this chart, because we're going up the ladder, we're going to move the decimal to the left. 2 spaces. Okay, so we're going to move the decimal 1, 2 spaces. So we're going to have 0.20 meters. Or 0.2 meters. Okay, let's try the next one. We're going from liters to milliliters. So let's go back to our little chart. Liters to milliliters. So we're going from the base right here, liters, to milli. Milli is right here. So we're going from 10 to the 0 to 10 to the 3. We're moving 3 spots, 0 to 3. 3 spots, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we're moving, going down the ladder. So we're going to move the decimal 3 spots to the right. The decimal's right here. We're going to move it 3 spots to the right. 1, 2, 3. That gives us 32 milliliters. Okay, let's try another one. We're going to go from micrometers to nanometers. So let's look at our little chart. We're going from micro, right here, to nano. So we're going from minus 6 to minus 9. We're moving 3 spots from 6 to 9. Micro to nano. And since we're going down, we're going to move the decimal to the right. 3 spots. So the decimal right now is here. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3 spots. Anywhere there's a loop, we have to put a 0. Now the decimal's there. 45,000 nanometers. Okay, last one. 805 decimeters to kilometers. Okay, so we're going from deci to kilo. Deci to kilo. So we're going from 10 to the minus 1 to 10 to the 3. So from minus 1 to 0, that's 1 spot, and then 1, 2, 3 more spots. So we're moving 4 spots. And since we're going from deci to kilo, and we're going up, we're going to go 4 spots to the left. So you should get, the decimal's right there, so you should get 1, 2, 3, 4. So that becomes 0.0805 kilometers. Okay, so let's talk about units of length. You must use the right unit of length to measure things. So if you're going a very far distance, you're going to be talking about kilometers. For instance, if you went 500 meters, that is half a kilometer. That's 0.5 kilometers. If you're measuring something that's somewhat small, like 2.5 meters, that's the same thing as saying 250 centimeters, because 100 centimeters is 1 meter. 1 centimeter, 10 millimeters. Now, so those are ones that you've seen before, but a unit that you don't see very often in your everyday world is nanometers. And these are important in chemistry because that's usually we're talking about things being even smaller than a nanometer, and we're talking about the distance between, let's say, an oxygen atom and a hydrogen atom. How long is that bond length between the oxygen and the hydrogen in a water molecule? So we talk about things being that small, which is why we use it's why we use these prefixes, these prefixes. We could also say, instead of saying this is 0.094 nanometers, we could say it's 9.4 times 10 to the minus 11 meters. This number is easier to work with. But they are all equivalent. So you need to be able to tell what are equivalent and what are not equivalent. Okay, so you're going to be practicing that when you go through the Nearpod. So you'll have a quiz. You'll have a quiz on the Nearpod. It's going to have 4 questions just to practice. So just make sure you run through it. Okay, just to give you an idea of how different measurements. If you're looking at a skyscraper, you can say a typical skyscraper is 0.35 kilometers, or you can say 350 meters. It's the same thing. Or, I don't know why you would say this, but you could say it's 350,000 millimeters. Don't know why you'd say that. It's not a proper unit for measuring it, but you could say that. For volume, we talk about volume in terms of liters in chemistry or in science. We talk about measurements of distance in terms of meters. We talk about volume in terms of liters. So you can have 2 liters, which is the same as 2,000 milliliters, which is the same as 0.002 kiloliters. When we talk about grams in science, we talk about it in terms of, when we talk about weight in science, we talk about in mass, we talk about in terms of grams. So a cat might weigh 5 kilograms. Or you could say it's 5,000 grams. Or you could say it's 50,000 decigrams. It's all the same, but you must use the proper unit. So a cat would be 5 kilograms, but you wouldn't weigh a cherry in kilograms because that would be 0.005 kilograms. And that's not a good unit. You would weigh a cherry in terms of grams. We talked about like a Coke bottle. We can use, we say it's a 2-liter bottle. Well, you wouldn't talk about medicine, liquid medicine in terms of liters. That wouldn't make sense. You would use milliliters because that's a unit that makes more sense. They're all mathematically equivalent, but how you talk about it matters. Okay, there's going to be one last question on the Nearpod, which is rating things, saying whether something is greater than, less than, or equal to. So we'll do a couple of examples like that, but then you should run through the Nearpod as well.
Okay, so on these cases, we're going to figure out what is bigger. Is 56 centimeters bigger or is 6 meters bigger? So what we have to do is put them in the same unit so we can convert them. So you can either convert, let's say for the first case, into meters. You can convert centimeters into meters, or you can convert meters into centimeters. Let's convert meters into centimeters. So let's go back over here. So we're going from meters to centimeters. We're going to go down 2 spots. We're moving down, so we're going to move the decimal to the right 2 spots. So 6 meters, we're moving the decimal 2 spots, is 600 centimeters. So we know that 600 centimeters is bigger than 56 centimeters. Okay, now let's go over here. Let's go from milligrams to grams. So which one do we want to convert? Let's convert grams into milligrams. So we're going from here to here. We're going to move from 0 to 3. 3 spots, and we're moving the decimal to the right. 3 spots to the right. 1, 2, 3. that makes this 7,000 milligrams. Oh, 7,000 milligrams is a lot bigger than 698 milligrams. Okay, so sometimes you need to compare numbers. You just have to make sure you put them in the same unit. This is something that takes a little bit of practice, and we will be learning, next unit, we will be learning a different way of converting using something called dimensional analysis. And it is my preferred way of doing it. We use dimensional analysis a lot in this class, and so you can move decimals or you can use dimensional analysis, and they both work, and they would both be appropriate for this class.